Hello, I'm working on a tennis roguelike game called Torso Tennis, and this is week one of my journey towards releasing the game in early access. So this week I'm going to be talking about playtesting, not in a way that you would typically expect to playtest a game, playtesting as a source of motivation, choosing the science that goes into choosing a launch date, why I decided to go into early access with this weird tennis roguelike here. I can buy an arm. I can't buy this tennis racket anymore. I can sell my arm. I can buy this tennis racket now. I've got a dino arm on here. Why I decided I want to release this in early access. And a little bit that goes into choosing the difficulty for the game. So what difficulty level are we going to kind of have here as we go into a tennis match with our opponent, who also has a dinosaur arm, but bananas for a head. Last week, we did a playtesting session. Me and some other indie game developers got together. We played each other's games kind of in depth for several hours. So at a convention, you do get some feedback, like someone will come up and play your demo for 10-15 minutes and you get some notes. But when someone really sits down with your game for a long session that has this experience of making games, it can be actually really both very helpful and very motivating, right? Because they're going to be able to praise you on the aspects that you put a lot of work into. A lot of people might not know all the work that goes into making menus and making the UX very clear on the hover and highlight things. But also, it's a great source of critical feedback as well. So I was able to add like a ton of things to my to-do list to get done here in the next coming weeks as we go into early access. So choosing a launch date has been kind of something I'm noodling on recently. I have like a date in mind, and since you're here on the YouTube video, I think I'll go ahead and share that with you. I was thinking about releasing the game on January 20th into early access. Now that lines up really well with the convention I'm going to in January. I would like to have it out before I go out there, so I can start getting a little feedback and adding the feedback from the convention into the early access release. But also, there's a lot going on in the news cycle around then. So TikTok is supposed to be banned in the US on January 19th, so one day before. Not great, because I do like posting videos on there to promote the game a little bit and get the word out. Now, the other thing is that's also the inauguration day in the US, which is inevitably going to, take up some of the news cycle on that day. But, the thing I always think about with indie games in particular, if I'm launching a big AAA game, that's probably not a good idea. But indie games are just like a completely different audience, and you're not going to try to get the maximum splash. Like, it might actually do you good to release on these days where no one else is willing to, because there's just less games taking up space that day. If this game probably isn't in the number of wish lists needed to hit the Steam new and upcoming trending or whatever it's called. I can't remember the exact name of it right now, but yeah. So because of that, I think I'm stealing this dinosaur head here right now. It's a good limb to steal. We're starting to build into a dinosaur and arm build here, which is really strong. But I think that date might be good, provided I think the thing that scares me more about it is that I won't be able to post videos on TikTok about it. Which is pretty important, I think, channel for communicating stuff about indie games right now, because people that like indie games get them in their feed, and not many other feeds on the internet do that right now. But anyway, so I think sometime mid-January, we're definitely going to put the early access out there. And why early access? I think like commonly now, people say that, especially like among indie developers, I don't know how many indie developers are watching versus people that just kind of like indie games, but common wisdom is just don't do early access, because people feel very entitled when they play an early access game that it should be very good, and if the game changes in a way they're unhappy with, they'll leave a negative review, and negative reviews stay with you forever. So there is a lot of fear in the indie game developer community around early access. But I kind of think, due to like the very open nature that I've been developing the game already, right? I've had the demo out for 6 months now. I've been updating it pretty constantly when I'm not doing contract work, when my full focus is on the game. I've got you know, 2 major content updates out with like several small patches in between there. I just feel like if I'm doing that already for the demo, I should be doing that for early access. And the game is in a point now with the content where it does have basically a full roguelike worth of content. There's 10 weeks of challenges here to fight through. Right here, I'm about to fight the first of the rivals, which is Leonardo Deteni, who has a very quick serve capabilities. There's tons of content already in the game, and it's kind of ready for people to play and give some feedback on. So I do have like a feedback form kind of built into the game that people can, you know, go and give some feedback. Maybe this boss is too hard for them, but it'll be good to just shape the game into making it really awesome. And I just want to add a ton more things like these weekend tattoos that you see here. They give you perma boosts, and I think this is an opportunity where in early access I'm going to add a ton more of these, because these really shake up the gameplay and make it interesting. So for example, this one allows you to kind of control where you're serving the tennis ball a little bit more, which is really nice. So I'm going to move this to the pocket here, and I'm going to show you a little bit of this patience tattoo. So I can kind of decide where I want to serve the tennis balls now and kind of serve them all in a row. That's really nice. Anyways, why early access? The other thing I've been doing is I stream like basically every weekday development on this game already. So there's a small community of people that have seen this game from the global game jam game it was 11 months ago into now the early access game that's about to be next month. So I'm pretty regularly been getting feedback from the community and putting ideas in the game that people have shared with me, and polishing areas where people think the game needs a little work. So I feel very comfortable with that feedback loop already, and kind of developing the game in public. So that's why early access. Hopefully that was a big bundle of ideas, but I hope that came through for you all. The difficulty of the game is something I did notice when we were playtesting last week, because hold on, I'm shopping here. I'm shopping. I've got a lot of extra cash here, and I'm about to fight some pretty difficult bosses this week. I think maybe the Dino Wing could be good. Let's roll into some other stuff here. We got the Lim. That's always a nice one too. Okay, I'm gonna sell that. I'm gonna grab the Dino Wing, and we're gonna hope we roll into some upgrades here. It's time to spend some of this money. So now we've got more of a Dino build going on. Anyways, the game does get very difficult around week 6 out of 10. I think that's the right choice, and here's why. Because in early access, if you got an early access roguelike game, and it was just like easy and you beat it in your first run, it just like wouldn't really be satisfying. I think like, sure, it should be fair. It shouldn't be like crazy difficult, but it should provide some challenge, and you should have to dig into the mechanics and learn about the synergy system in order to beat a run. You know, like there's so much going on in this game. I mean, you're seeing a little bit of it here as I'm playing through, but like these shells here that I have on my side are defensive units, but you know, if your opponent is using them, how do you work against that? It's pretty challenging. And you can see now my opponent is the boss with some weak spots, so I have to kind of target my serves to hit the weak spots. That's something that you have to kind of learn. Sorry, I'm getting in the zone now. It's kind of hard to follow my train of thought. So the game is going to be extra difficult in early access, and maybe it gets a little easier towards launch. But I was listening to an interview the other day with JW of Vlambeer, who made the game Nuclear Throne, and they were also an early access roguelike. And something that was mentioned is that they think the game became so difficult partly because it was an early access game, that the community that was very involved with the game, they wanted the game to be a challenge. If they're playing it week after week and checking out all the updates, then the game is going to trend more in the direction of catering to them. So they actually had to actively kind of like towards the end of early access pay attention to, okay, like what what does this game look like for someone who hasn't played it before? Like, is this still a good experience? And it is. Like, if you've played that game, it's pretty rough in that first level. You will suffer a little bit, but that's part of the joy of the game. It's game over so quickly, and then you just jump right into another run. It's a really nice game. Anyways, I think that's about it for our little weekly update here. Stay tuned. We're going to keep doing these until we launch in early access, and then we're going to keep doing these as we're in early access, because that's what you got to do. You got to be present with the community and explaining what's going on in the game. So just wanted to get in the habit of doing that before I launch early access. So that's why I'm here today with you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to co-work along with me in the mornings on Twitch, that's Too Much Tomato. I set this little timer here for 20-minute work blocks, and I actually just kind of get off the mic for a little bit and encourage people to add their own tasks onto the overlay. I do that. Make sure you wishlist Torso Tennis on Steam leading up into the early access launch, because there is going to be a launch discount and you want to get notified of that. So make sure you go to the Steam page and wishlist Torso Tennis if you're at all interested, or you just want to, help me out for no money at all. Just a wishlist does actually help with the Steam visibility. So I really appreciate that, and we'll catch you next week.